Have you ever stopped and asked yourself which lesbian couples were so strong, so unforgettable, that they left a mark on history and pop culture forever? Think about it. Throughout time, love has always been powerful, but some loves shine so brightly that they can't be ignored. Some of these couples had to live in the shadows, writing hidden letters, meeting in secret places, and speaking in codes just to protect their feelings. Their love was real, but the world wasn't ready to accept it. Still, they didn't let fear erase their story. So today, we're not just talking about relationships. We're exploring 10 legendary lesbian couples whose stories still echo through time. Their courage inspires us, their struggles remind us of how far we've come, and their love continues to show the world that real love never fades, it only grows stronger. Let's begin with one of the most unforgettable couples in literary history, Virginia Woolf and Vita Sackville West. Virginia Woolf was not just any writer, she was one of the most brilliant minds of the modernist era, a woman who shaped the way stories were told forever. Vita Sackville West, on the other hand, was a daring poet, novelist, and aristocrat with a larger-than-life personality. When the two of them met in the 1920s, something incredible happened. Their connection was instant, like two sparks colliding and creating a fire that couldn't be put out. But their relationship wasn't only about romance, it was about the meeting of two powerful minds. They challenged each other, inspired each other, and built a bond that was emotional, physical, and deeply intellectual. Vita's bold and adventurous spirit became the heartbeat of one of Woolf's most famous works, Orlando. This wasn't just a novel, it was a fantastical, playful, and deeply personal love letter. Many readers and scholars believe Orlando might be the most beautiful declaration of love ever written in literature. Now, imagine the world they were living in. It was the early 20th century, a time when women were often told to stay silent, to obey rules, and to live within strict limits. Yet here were two women who refused to be silent. Instead, they used their art, their words, and their courage to speak louder than society ever expected them to. Their love didn't just stay between the two of them, it shaped history, leaving us with works of art and passion that still echo 100 years later. Next, we move into the glamorous yet secretive world of old Hollywood with Greta Garbo and Mercedes de Acosta. Greta Garbo was one of the most mysterious stars the world had ever seen. On screen, she was breathtaking, an icon of Hollywood's golden age, admired and desired by millions. Men chased after her, and her name was always linked to rumors of romance. But what many people didn't know at the time was that Garbo's heart belonged not to those men, but to women. And among those women, one stood out above the rest, Mercedes de Acosta. Mercedes was a writer, playwright, and socialite. She lived boldly in a time when most women were forced to hide who they were. When she and Garbo crossed paths, their connection quickly turned into a passionate affair. It was a relationship full of fire, but also filled with storms, intense love mixed with jealousy, longing, and heartbreak. They wrote each other letters that revealed their deepest desires and pain, letters that still survive today as proof of how powerful their bond was. Hollywood in those days was built on secrets. Stars were carefully managed, their public images controlled, and their private lives hidden away to protect careers. But even in that world of silence, Garbo and Mercedes's love found a way to be remembered. Garbo's intensity, her air of mystery, the way she carried herself both on and off the screen, many believe Mercedes was at the center of it all, the woman who stirred the emotions behind the legend. Their story reminds us that even in an era where silence was forced, love always left its mark. Garbo may have been the untouchable star, but Mercedes was the one who truly touched her heart. On to one of the most surprising and tender love stories in American history, Eleanor Roosevelt and Lorena Hickok. Eleanor Roosevelt wasn't just the First Lady of the United States, she was a force of nature. She was admired around the world for her compassion, her fight for human rights, and her courage to speak out on issues that many people tried to ignore. To the public, she was the perfect example of dignity, strength, and leadership. But behind the political spotlight, Eleanor carried a secret, one that history only discovered through thousands of private letters. That secret was her intimate, lifelong connection with Lorena Hickok, a journalist who at first was assigned to cover Eleanor's work. Their professional relationship quickly grew into something much deeper. The two women exchanged over 3,000 letters during their lifetimes, and many of these letters were filled with deep affection, tenderness, and longing. In her words, Eleanor wrote not like a first lady addressing a journalist, but like a woman pouring out her heart to the person she loved most. Now imagine the weight of her position. Eleanor was one of the most powerful and respected women in the world, standing beside President Franklin D. Roosevelt during some of the most difficult years in American history. And yet, in the middle of that political storm, she carried a love so personal, so fragile, that it could never be spoken aloud in public. Historians have argued for decades about the true nature of their relationship. Was it romantic, or was it an extraordinary friendship? But when you read Eleanor's words, when you feel the tenderness in her letters, the answer becomes clear. Whatever label people try to give it, this was love in its purest, most human form. A love that survived distance, pressure, and time, and one that still moves us today. Now, let's step into the 1990s with K.D. Lang and Leisha Haley. At a time when mainstream media rarely showed queer love, these two musicians lived authentically and unapologetically. Their relationship made headlines because it was bold. They weren't hiding. They showed the world that you could be successful, creative, and deeply in love with another woman. And it didn't have to be a scandal. For many young people of the time, seeing them together was the first glimpse of possibility, the first hint that love could be both real and celebrated. And then, the couple everyone knows, Ellen DeGeneres and Portia de Rossi. When Ellen came out in the late 1990s, it nearly destroyed her career. She was mocked, blacklisted, and written off by Hollywood. But she didn't give up. Years later, she found love with Portia de Rossi. And together, they became one of the most visible lesbian couples in the world. Their marriage wasn't just personal, it was political. It showed millions of people that love could survive the storm and come out stronger. Before Ellen and Portia, though, there was Melissa Etheridge and Julie Cypher. In the early 90s, they shocked the world when they announced they were raising children together, conceived via artificial insemination. At the time, same-sex parenting was still controversial. People questioned it, criticized it, even mocked it. But Melissa and Julie didn't care. They loved their kids and weren't afraid to be open. In many ways, they walked so today's LGBTQ families could run. In the world of fashion and Hollywood glamour, we have Stella Maxwell and Kristen Stewart. Their relationship turned heads, not just because of who they were, but how they carried themselves. Kristen, once the shy Twilight star, embraced her identity openly with Stella, a Victoria's Secret model. They weren't afraid to be seen together, to walk red carpets hand in hand, to show affection in a world that still sometimes punishes visibility. For a younger generation, they became the definition of cool, edgy, and unashamedly queer. One of the most inspiring pairings is Sarah Paulson and Holland Taylor. Sarah, one of the most respected actresses of her generation, and Holland, a legendary talent herself, defied stereotypes about age and love. With a 30-year age gap, their relationship sparked curiosity and criticism. But instead of hiding, they celebrated their bond. They proved that love doesn't have an expiration date, and that happiness comes from being with the person who truly understands you. Then there's Jodie Foster and Alexandra Hedison. For decades, Jodie Foster kept her personal life away from the spotlight. The media speculated endlessly, but she remained private until she finally acknowledged her truth. When she married photographer Alexandra Hedison, it was more than just a wedding. It was a moment of liberation. For fans who had looked up to her for years, seeing Jodie Foster finally happy and open was a victory for representation. And finally, the couple that might be the most enduring of all, Lily Tomlin and Jane Wagner. Together for over half a century, their love is proof that true partnerships don't just survive, they thrive. Lily, the comedian, and Jane, the writer, worked side by side, creating timeless art while building a quiet, steady life together. In Hollywood, where relationships come and go like the seasons, they stood the test of time. Their love story isn't just iconic, it's legendary. These 10 couples show us that love, in all its forms, has the power to break barriers, challenge norms, and inspire generations. Some had to fight in the shadows, some stood proudly in the spotlight, but every one of them carved out space in history and left behind stories we still can't stop telling. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the most iconic lesbian couples in history and pop culture, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more powerful stories, and share in the comments which couple inspired you the most.